Good morning, good afternoon. We're going to continue with using our SOHCAHTOA to solve triangles for missing sides. SOHCAHTOA. Okay, and we're going to use SOHCAHTOA. Ooh, what's up with my T? SOHCAHTOA to our aim and our goal is to solve for a missing side of a triangle. All right, that's our goal. So here we have three triangles. Let's just read through this. As we have seen in the other two videos that I made, problems 1 and 3, an important part of solving problems and using trig methods is to decide on a trig function that uses the given information. That means decide, are you going to use sine? Are you going to use cosine? Are you going to use tangent? For each triangle below, write two equations involving trig functions of acute angles that include s and the indicated length. Then rewrite each equation in the equivalent form s equals. All right, so we're going to write them twice. So perfect. So for these, what you have to do, they never really gave us an angle to reference. So for all of these, I'm just going to pick an angle. So let's say for this one, we pick A. Okay, I think I'm just going to go with the letter that comes first in the alphabet. So A. So let's say that's A. First thing you want to do is visualize each side. So this is your hypotenuse side. The next two side is your adjacent side. Okay, and then this is your opposite side. So if we're going to be writing two equations to solve that, our two equations would be, well, let's see. So first off, so we're not actually coming up with a number answer. Okay, so A, so if this is our A side, so we'd have from A, if A is our reference point, we have the adjacent and the hypotenuse. What angle uses the adjacent, or what trig function uses adjacent and hypotenuse? So let's look up here. It's cosine. So this would be the cosine of A is equal to S divided by 7. All right? That's if we use this top part as our reference point. Okay? Now, let's say instead, I'm trying to think of like what's the easiest way to do this. Because I kind of went ahead of myself right here. Okay. So let's say if instead, I'm going to do it this way. I'm so fancy. Send to current page. Okay. So let's say instead, if we wanted to use the other angle as a reference, because we're just doing it twice, okay, what would that look like? So I'm just going to take this picture and I'm going to put it over here. Let's do it again. So this is still the same triangle. The only difference is I didn't write on this one. So let's use our reference point as C. So if C is our reference point, the hypotenuse stays the same, but now the opposite, now S is the opposite side. We want to think how do we pick a trig function? Now we have our angle as C, right? And we have the opposite of our hypotenuse. This is where we use our sine. So we'd say sine, the sine of A is equal to the opposite, which is S, over 7. Okay? Now for both of these, we want to solve them for the missing side. So I think the easiest way to do that is just to visualize what this might look like. So cosine A is equal to S over 7. Okay, so to solve that, you want to undo that divide 7, so you want to multiply by 7. So for this problem, you would get the way to write your answer, you use multiplication 7 cosine A equals S. That's your answer. Okay? And you would do the same thing over here. Now notice you don't multiply 7 in A, you multiply 7 times all the cosine of A. You end up doing the same thing here because even though I typed it out, okay, this is still the same. This means sine of A is equal to S over 7. And you're going to multiply to get rid of that divide by 7. So multiply by 7, multiply by 7. And I always put the 7 in the front because I don't want to get confused and multiply the A bar. So it's 7 times the sine of A. And that would be your answer. It would look like this. 7 sine A equal to S. So those are your two answers. Okay. Sometimes when I use this feature, my computer really doesn't know how to act. And now's the time. Yep, doesn't know how to act because all of a sudden I'm using the highlight feature. Yep. So those are your two answers for that one. All right, let's take a look at our next problem. So let's take a look at our next one. So maybe we can move this up so it looks a little different. Yeah, see my computer, it doesn't know how to act. Whenever I give it the highlighter, it's like, it doesn't know how to act. So let's put it back to the pen. And hopefully I'll eventually get it together. Yeah, see? Okay, cool. So it's back on the pen, which is great. On this. All right. Let's move all these up. Keep it organized. Yeah, baby. Okay. All right, so there's your answer. So here's our next triangle, and we're going to look at it two different ways. So I'm just going to take a little copy. So on your paper, you might want to copy this twice. Maybe. All right. You might want to copy it twice. So for our first angle we're going to be looking at, let's just go in alphabetical order. So let's look at D first. D comes before F. So this is our reference. So if we were to label this is our hypotenuse. And 8 would be what? Our opposite. So which trig function uses the opposite in hypotenuse? It's going to be this one. Sine of the angle, because sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So katoa, right? Sine, opposite over hypotenuse. Sine of D is equal to 8. And I'm going to type this out. I'm going to make it real fancy looking, okay? Is equal to 8 over S, because we're going to have to solve it, and it's going to be step by step. 8 divided by S. That's my S, okay? Now, that's an S. It looks like a 5. That's really sad. I'm sorry you look like a 5S. So what we're going to do here, all right, and this is our missing thing right here. That really looks like a 5. It's bugging me out. Let's make that nicer. Yeah, maybe that's a better S. 8 over S. Okay, we're going to do the same thing, but now let's reference another side. So here we are looking at this angle as our point of perspective. Now our perspective point is up here, F. So if we look at F, our S is still our hypotenuse. Okay, but our 8 is our adjacent side. Okay, so we're going to set this up as doing the same thing. Sine of F is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Now our adjacent side here is 8. So let's type that in. So it would be 8. And I'm going to type this in. No, we're not using sine. That's wrong. That's wrong. Adjacent over hypotenuse. So katoa. That's my fault. I got distracted. I was looking at the time. That's what it was. Cosine of F is equal to 8 over S. So it's going to be equal to 8 over S, like that. Okay? So we have our two functions, and now we're going to rewrite each of these. Now this is a little different. Here we rewrote it using multiplication because we were dividing, right? Because to solve for S we had to undo division. Now here to solve for S we're going to have to do something different. So we're going to do something different. So take a minute and think about that. Think about what we might need to do different. Okay, so we're going to go through step by step. Now we notice here that the unknown is in the bottom of the fraction. And whenever the unknown is in the bottom of the fraction...
Is there anybody in here, Ms. Novak?
Sorry about that. That was my co-teacher in on a meeting with us. So what we're going to be doing is we want to solve this equation for sine or for cosine. So what I think of is I always think I have one fraction. If I can make it so there's two fractions, life gets real easy. So I'm actually going to make this into a fraction here. I'm going to say this is sine and cosine. And we know anything divided by what? By what? Is itself 1. So I'm going to put a 1 under there. And then I'm going to use cross multiply and divide to solve this. So I'm going to cross multiply and divide. So I'm going to multiply 1 and 8 and divide to get S. So let me type out what I'm doing so you guys can see it. So I'm going to call this cross multiply and divide. And you can only use this when you have one fraction equal to another fraction. Don't be trying to use this when you have some extra stuff going on, okay? So cross multiply and divide. So 1 times 8. So our answer would look like this. 1 times 8. 1 times 8 over the sine of D is equal to S. Okay? And then we know 1 times 8 is just 8, so I'm just going to write that as 8. But that's where it came from. 1 times 8 is just 8. So 8 over sine D is equal to S. Okay? And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to cross multiply and divide. So 1 times 8 is equal to, isn't it something like this? There's a way that they write it. It's like, looks like a butterfly or a fish or something. But it's equal 1 times 8 cross multiply and divide by cosine of f is equal to s. Okay, so that's how you would solve that. All right, and that would be what your answer would look like for both of these. All right, I'm going to give you guys a minute. I want you guys to think about how you would solve this last problem. I would copy the triangle twice onto your paper. So send to current page. And I would, just as like a jump up, let me get you guys jump started on this. As a jump up, I would reference one angle over the other. So QRS, so let's do Q. We'll reference Q for this one and reference P for this one. So take a second, write the equation, solve it out. Write the equation, solve it out. Okay, so we noticed that the first way, from the first perspective looking at Q, the opposite side on the other side is our missing side S, and the adjacent side is 15. So we have tangent of Q is opposite over adjacent, TOA. TOA. All right, and then on this down here, we have the tangent of P is 15. The opposite side switches to S because our perspective changes. What's opposite from us changes, okay? So that's going to be important when we go to set up and solve the equation. We're going to notice that since here we have the unknown kind of up top, we're going to solve this equation kind of like how we did this one up top here. And since we have the unknown on the bottom, we're going to be solving this equation like we did in the second column right in here. That's my arrow. It's kind of an ugly looking arrow, okay? All right, so why don't you guys take a minute, stop the video, and work on those solutions on your paper and pencil, and let's see how you do. Okay, all right, so we worked out the solution here. For this one, you end up multiplying both sides by 15. So your answer equation is 15 tangent Q equals S. And the next one, you cross multiply and divide. So you multiply 15 times 1, or 15, and divide by what's left, and that's S. Those are the two answers you should get. So this was kind of like the big idea from this lesson, okay, is just using this SOHCAHTOA. And you want to set up an equation that has what you have and what you don't have. So you have to kind of look at the two sides you're given. So for this first one, we're looking at the adjacent side and the hypotenuse side. So that tells us we're going to use our cosine. For this one, we had our opposite side and our hypotenuse side. That tells us we're going to use sine. And then we have to use algebra to solve each equation.